Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Wendy Davis. I'm a former Texas state senator. And of course, one of the issues that was incredibly important to me and continues to be are reproductive rights and justice in the state of Texas and throughout the country. I'm so excited to have you joining us, whether you're returning from last year's Repro Film Fest or whether this is your first time. We're really grateful that you're with us. Through the knowledge, the intention, and the action of all of us, Repro, of course, is the only film festival in the world dedicated to reproductive justice, advocating for inclusive reproductive health care, justice, and bodily autonomy for women, cis, trans, and non-binary alike. When you purchase tickets and you donate to Repro, you have become an active participant of these changes, as all net ticket sales support the three beneficiary organizations: Black Women's Health Imperative, the Lilith Fund, and No More Secrets. Get all of the info at reprofilmfest.com. We'd like to thank our sponsors, including Bloomberg Philanthropies, the Stover Lafer Foundation, the Laurie M. Tisch Illumination Fund, and the Shepherd Foundation. Welcome to our call to action conversation: Texans fighting back, keeping the choice in pro-choice, which in Texas becomes more difficult every day. Today, we're going to be talking about current bills in our state, lawsuits regarding those bills, and the legal attacks on women's bodily autonomy in the state of Texas. And I'm so honored to be joined by and to introduce our special guest for this conversation today. Christina Parker is Communications Director for the Lilith Fund. The Lilith Fund is one of our abortion funds in the state that is providing direct funding for women to be able to access abortion care. We also are joined by a remarkable person in the fight for reproductive rights, Catherine Kitty Colbert. She goes by Kitty with us tonight. She is co-founder of the amazing Center for Reproductive Rights. And honestly, I cannot even imagine where we would be without the Center for Reproductive Rights fighting in courts across the country, and of course at the United States Supreme Court for reproductive rights and justice. She is co-author of Controlling Women: What We Must Do Now to Save Reproductive Freedom. And she is a lawyer who argued the historical case of Planned Parenthood versus Casey in the Supreme Court. We're also joined by Kathy Torres. She is a board member of two very important organizations in South Texas, the South Texans for Reproductive Justice and the Frontera Fund, which, like Lilith Fund, is an abortion fund helping to make sure that women in our border communities have the resources they need to access abortion care. And we're just so excited to have all of you with us tonight as well. I'm going to kick us off just by talking a little bit about my own experience in Texas and the fact that year over year over year, the intrusion on women's reproductive rights and justice here has put us in a situation where there are many people who no longer are protected by Roe v. Wade because it's been chipped away so very much that their own rights have been almost completely taken away. And it's thanks to funds like the Frontera Fund and the Lilith Fund and fighters like the Center for Reproductive Rights that we have the opportunity to push back against those intrusions. But I want to take us back to 2011. That was a year in which Texas took away about $120 million from women's health care in our state. And if you watch the film On the Divide, which talks specifically about what's happening in our border communities as a consequence of some of the intrusive laws in Texas, you will hear them talking about the fact that the withdrawal of those funds, the defunding of women's health care, has contributed to a climate where not only is abortion care inaccessible, but every other kind of reproductive health care that you can imagine is inaccessible as well. When that withdrawal of funds occurred, we had over 80 supporting reproductive health care clinics across the state of Texas that closed. And it's been a real challenge to make sure that the support services that were being provided by them has been replaced. And then, of course, in 2013, the bill that I filibustered, that we all, through the people's filibuster, filibustered, was a law that closed over half of our abortion clinics, giving rise to funds like the Frontera Fund and the Lilith Fund to help women access the few remaining clinics that we had here in our state. And year by year, it just gets worse. In the pandemic, and that's the first thing I want to talk about, as a consequence of limited healthcare resources, Governor Abbott used that excuse to stop allowing abortion care to take place in the state of Texas. And I want to talk specifically with Kathy and Christina. If you can tell us, what was the impact on your communities and the people that you serve? Christina, we'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah, so in the early days of the pandemic, abortion was banned in Texas for about a month. And that gives us a really good, real or bad, idea of what it's going to look like when abortion is banned on September 1st. Obviously, we hope it gets stopped in court, but what happened was people were forced to stay pregnant against their will in the middle of a public health crisis, an unprecedented pandemic. Our clients had to travel out of state, often alone, because clinics had a no companion rule, to keep people social distance. It increased the cost. There were extra costs associated with having to leave the state, like childcare, lodging, and lost wages. I mean, it was unbelievably cruel to do this to Texans in the middle of a pandemic, and it's what they're hoping to do again on September 1st.
Kathy, how about you? What was the impact that you saw on the women that you serve?
Yeah, definitely resonate with that. It was tough. We have a pretty consistent amount of people who contact us, when things like this don't happen, when there's no bans. And we just saw a dramatic decrease. People just weren't able to get the care that they needed. We did fund a few people because Fontana Fund also does practical support aside from direct service. So we were able to fund a couple people, to leave the state. But, we were so concerned for them, not only because they're, like Christina mentioned, alone to maintain social distancing, but, they're having to travel in the middle of a pandemic. And like, no one should do that. And then also, I guess something else that I really go back to that month when I start to think about SB8 coming into effect in a matter of days, because it was such a roller coaster. Was the month of April felt like a year long, because it was first week it was banned, the next week, oh, it was lifted, then the third week it was banned, the fourth week it was lifted. It was such a roller coaster. So thankful for Whole Women's Health here in McAllen. We were able to communicate with them and tell them, what's it looking like over there? Not good. Us here kind of crying together with clinic staff because we were so, just the emotional toll it took on us, on providers, and on callers. It was just completely like cruel, I feel.
And that's
Yeah,
such a Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to add the thing about it being a roller coaster. We heard from multiple clients that they were literally in the clinic or driving to the clinic and had their appointments canceled because the court made another ruling, and had to call back multiple times and figure out what's going on. And just imagine how that must feel, how frightening and demoralizing that is, and all the while being forced to stay pregnant against your will. It's awful.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the really important pieces of the Repro Film Festival, the telling of personal stories. And for those of you who are with us, if you haven't had a chance yet to watch On the Divide, it really helps paint a picture of what those challenges look like in Texas today, and of course, that are mirrored all around the country. And Kitty, as a lawyer, co-founder of Center for Reproductive Rights, and a fighter on this journey for many, many years, I know you've seen intrusions upon the right to access safe and legal abortion all over the country, state by state by state. But we here in Texas feel that things have gotten particularly dire with the passage of Senate Bill 8. Senate Bill 8, of course, which creates essentially a 6-week pregnancy ban prior to most people even knowing that they are pregnant, and creates an absolute obstacle to abortion care following that. But it's unique. And can you talk a little bit about the uniqueness with which the Texas legislature brought this law forward?
Well, thanks, Wendy, and it's great to be here. I think the Texas law, SB 8, is probably the most pernicious statute I've seen in many, many years, because it allows private people, any anti-abortion person, any crazy in the world, to bring a lawsuit against not only clinic providers, but people who help them to obtain abortions. And the reality is should this law take effect, you'd be crazy to do abortions in the state of Texas because of the potential liability. But let me just go back a second and say once again, because the stories that Kathy and Christina are telling shows the problems with depending on the courts to solve this problem. I'm tired of knocking our heads against the marble walls. I think we no longer can depend on the federal courts, the state courts, the courts at all to solve this problem. If we are going to save reproductive justice and reproductive freedom going forward, we need to build the political power to make sure these laws don't go into effect and to reverse them so that going forward, women will again be able to obtain services. And people all over the country are watching Texas because of the perniciousness of this particular law. But let me be clear here, Texas is not the only state that has severe bans. And should this law be upheld by the courts, which I suspect it may be at some point this year or next, then we're likely to see the same law passed in at least 23 other states, which are controlled by the Republicans. So as Texas goes, so goes the nation. But let's get away from believing that the courts will save us this time around. We need to build the political power to undo these crazy laws and make sure they don't get passed in the first place in other places.
That's exactly right. I'm sorry, my dog just startled me. That's exactly right. And I think that's why it's important that we're having this conversation this evening, because each of us has an opportunity, and I believe the responsibility, to make sure that we are fighting to elect the kind of representatives who will once and for all end this fight, because it's not only growing wearisome for those who have been engaged in the battle year after year after year, but person by person by person by person, as Christina and Kathy were talking about the toll that some of our other anti-abortion laws have taken in Texas, it is taking a very real human toll all over the United States. Kitty, one of the things that I think is important for people to understand about the Texas Senate Bill 8 and what makes it unique, and you mentioned this briefly, this creates a private cause of action. It allows anyone, including perhaps your rapist, to bring a suit against a woman who is seeking abortion care in Texas. It would allow a suit to be brought against the Lilith Fund and the Frontera Fund and the other abortion funds in Texas who are raising money and helping to provide financial and transportation resources to women seeking abortion care. It could extend as far as the person standing outside an abortion clinic as a volunteer to be an escort or a security personnel who's trying to make sure that we can access abortion care safely in our state. And that's been one of the real challenges legally about Senate Bill 8. Typically, it's the state, it's a governmental entity that brings one of these suits or has the potential power to stop women from accessing abortion. And it gives a ready legal target to be able to go after. But in this instance, the question of how to kick off a lawsuit that will block the impact of this Senate bill from going forward, this new law from going forward, that's been a unique challenge. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I don't want to get too much into legalese, but one of the big problems is that this notion of a private cause of action is one that has been used in other areas of the law and have been upheld. For example, in many consumer protection laws or environmental laws, you have the ability to bring private causes of action. And the uniqueness of Texas is they said the state or the state actors who you usually sue to stop a law from going into effect can't be defendants here. You can only go after the people who bring these private rights of action, what I call the vigilantes in this effort, and the bounty that gets put on the heads of people who assist those seeking abortion. I think the bottom line is that the only way women will get services going forward with this, if this law goes into effect, is by self-aborting, by taking medication abortion, but even the provision of help to those women could be grounds for a lawsuit. So in that way, it's very, very, very problematic. And I think, women have always had abortions, even when they're banned. Remember Texas in the days before Roe? So we're not going to eliminate abortions in Texas. But what we want to do is to make sure that they're safe and that that women have appropriate information and that women can get the services they need. And that's part of my message to you, which is don't depend on the courts. Get active politically. It's not just an electoral fight, but it's one that means that you need to help the women who need services, but also to provide a whole range of other activities to make sure that this doesn't happen going forward, even if it takes going in the streets and protesting.
That's absolutely right. And Christina and Kathy, you, of course, are on the front lines every day of understanding what the impact of these laws in Texas have looked like. And I'd like to turn us, if I can, to the topic of intersectionality, how these anti-abortion laws are having a particularly challenging impact on marginalized women, including immigrant women, women of color, and poor women. What can you tell us about the state of abortion access and care for women who are marginalized in our state?
Sure, I can start. I know, Kathy, you have a lot to add to about this, but everyone you just mentioned, those are our clients. Most of the people we serve are people of color. They're already parents. They're underinsured or low income. These are the people who are most impacted by abortion bans. The rich will always be able to get an abortion because there will always be somewhere to go. The people who suffer in an abortion ban are the folks who already suffer for all of the other reasons, in our society: lack of healthcare, racism, sexism, all of that. I know Kathy, working at the border, has a lot to say about how that impacts their clients.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely. Same thing, those are the clients that we serve. And here in McAllen, We're the only we are the only city that has an abortion clinic from Mexico City to San Antonio. And 60 miles north of McAllen, we have our unconstitutional Customs Border Patrol checkpoint. So if folks remember, like at 6 weeks, most people don't know that they're pregnant. And if folks find out that they are past 6 weeks and they need to leave McAllen, leave the state of Texas, it's impossible to do so. So that's just adds another layer of barriers on top of the near total ban that we have to consider. So that is our concern, just that we are a population here in the valley of 1.3 million people, and we just have this one clinic here. And then we have this unconstitutional checkpoint, and while we have, Mexico right there, there's just a lot that comes into play. Not to mention the language involved with SB8. A lot of people already believe and feel that abortion is illegal to begin with when it's not. So it's the language, that fear mongering language. It's, the sense of panic that people are going to feel if they don't feel it already. With, I'm already restricted into where I can go to get my abortion, and now I can't even get it in my state. That's just a thought around people's minds, and something that we're really, really, it's just floating around our heads at all times.
There's no
Kathy, I
question.
think
Yeah, go ahead, Christina.
I was just thinking about what you said, Kathy, about it's like the misinformation is the point as well. And a lot of these things they do, they want people to think that they don't have access. And obviously, like, access is really, it's really hard to access an abortion already. It's going to be harder. That's true. But they want people to think that it's illegal, that you can't get it, that if you're a Texan, you somehow don't have a right to an abortion. And I think so much of that is like, that's the point for them.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
No, yeah, and I was just going to say, and what's terrifying, and it may be going off a little bit, is how some cities are adopting this language as well. Frontera Fund and South Texans Reproductive Justice, along with 7 other repro groups here in the Valley, we just organized an effort to stop a abortion ban ordinance here in Edinburg, Texas, which is right next to McAllen, and the language was identical to SB8. It was a $10,000 fine. It was, you name it, it was there. It was like we were watching SB8, but in like city ordinance form.
So Kathy, that's not a new strategy. For 40 years, the anti-abortion groups have taken models that they find to be particularly effective, float them around from state to state and to local municipalities to try to get them adopted. Because what they're doing with these laws is building political power. And I think we need to really focus very clearly on the fact that we need to make sure there's a price that is paid for taking away our rights. I mean, Wendy, you're a great example of causing a lot of trouble, making it hard. Ultimately, we need to fight back in ways that are much more vocal and much more radical than we've done in the past, because otherwise they will keep passing these things over and over and over again, Kathy, in municipalities, in Texas, and in every other state controlled by the Republicans.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
exactly
definitely.
right.
Yeah, and
ahead,
I mean, we saw it here in our backyard, and thankfully, because we did exactly that, organized our community, rose hell, the
Yeah.
ordinance died right in our tracks. So it
You
works.
guys
It
did
does.
amazing.
Thanks. Yeah,
Congratulations.
It
thank
was
you. Yeah, it
amazing.
was that in the midst of all of this, we take those small wins, right? In this
Mhm.
movement, that's
Exactly
what we
right.
have to do. So that's, we're seeing it happen in municipalities, like you mentioned. Historically, that's what happens, but we're not going to let it happen here. We're kind of like, listen, no, 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 like, you're already doing enough to us. No way. So we are resilient. We are from these communities. I myself I'm born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley. If I needed an abortion, I would contact an abortion fund. So we resonate. And we're all resilient, and these small wins like this show a perfect example of, we're not gonna let SB8 like stop us.
That's exactly right. The abortion funds in Texas are a tremendous example of what it looks like to operate within a very difficult framework, but finding a resourceful way to make sure that in spite of that framework of laws, women are still able to access abortion care in our state. Oftentimes, when I hear the conversation about the threat to Roe, the fact that this Mississippi case now, of course, has presented this question very squarely before the US Supreme Court. And of course, the Center for Reproductive Rights, and a really important part of fighting that. For many people in the state of Texas and in some other states that have extremely restrictive abortion laws already on the books, the protections of Roe really don't exist anymore. Can you talk about that, Christina and Kathy, from the perspective of the people that you serve?
Sure. I mean, it comes down to like, what does it mean to have a right if you can't access it? You know, if we have in our state coverage ban, neither Medicaid nor private insurance can be used to pay for an abortion in Texas. So you have to pay out of pocket. It's why we exist. It's why abortion funds are here. So if you don't have the money, you can't access your right. If you can't get to where you need to because you are trapped by a border patrol checkpoint that, like Kathy said, is just a complete violation of the Constitution, then you can't, you can't get it right. So that, we talk about how Roe isn't enough and hasn't been enough for people in the South for a long time. And Kitty, I resonated with what you said about, we're tired of waiting for the courts to save us. And that's what it looks like. People in the South, if you can't actually access it, what does it mean to have that right?
Wendy, let me add, though, that the Supreme Court is going to decide the continuing validity of Roe in this Mississippi case. And people say to me all the time, oh, they can't do that. Yeah, they can do that. And they have 6 votes to do that, and you only need 5. I say to people all the time, arguing in front of the Supreme Court is a lot like Sesame Street. You need to learn to count. And the only number that matters is 5, and they've got 6. So let's be clear here. Either in this Mississippi case or at some case in the future, this conservative Supreme Court, the majority of whom are extraordinarily anti-abortion, are going to take away the meager rights we still have, and will send back to the states the ability to ban abortion at some point in pregnancy. It may be 15 weeks, it may be earlier. They will leave that, in most cases, to the states. And that means that Texas, with the SB 8, or frankly, the law before Roe, which was even more extreme, or laws that have been passed in multiple other states, will take effect. And we need to be prepared to take action, both now and in the future, to win back the rights that we will lose. The anti-abortion movement organized a 50-year strategy. This didn't just happen overnight, okay? This is a strategy they implemented from the day Roe was handed down. And we need to do the same. And it means that we have to look very carefully at positive states that can preserve our rights, that finding ways to help women get from bad states to good states, to build the political power we need to make sure good laws can be enacted. And frankly, more than anything, just do something. All of you activists out there, the most important thing you can do to save reproductive justice and reproductive freedom going forward is to get active, to do something that works for you, but to do something. Sitting on the sidelines is no longer an option.
That's exactly right, Kitty. And we all have the power to play an important role in what happens going forward. I have a feeling that because right now most of the impact of the anti-abortion laws in Texas are being felt by marginalized women, when these impacts are felt more broadly to people of privilege, like a good friend of mine who I had this conversation with years ago, and who said to me, she's a Republican voter. I was talking to her about the importance of who we elect and who is serving on our courts with regard to abortion laws. close family members of hers have accessed abortion care in Texas. And her response to me was that that was never going to happen, that that right was never going to go away. And I think for a number of people of privilege, even in states like Texas, there's still that belief because the impact of the laws that have been passed to date haven't personally been felt by them. But what I hope out of tragedy can come some strength in movement building, that when the impacts of this become more broadly felt, if a law like SB 8 is allowed to go into effect, for example, that we will be able to ignite a much broader anger and call for justice from people across the state, not just those who have been directly impacted and a part of this fight to date. I do want to go back to local regulation, though, and talk a little bit about Lubbock. In Lubbock, Texas, which is near the Panhandle and the Great South Plains of Texas, Planned Parenthood had done a great deal of work, raised the resources, and opened a new clinic there that provided a range of women's and other reproductive health services, and also abortion care. And a municipal law was passed, actually, banning abortion in their city, which caused, at least while the court battle ensues, the closure of Lubbock's clinic. And Kathy and Christina, I just wanted to ask you if you've felt the impacts of that through the funds that you work with, and what women who live near and in Lubbock are doing right now to make sure that they can access that care.
So we in Frontera for Frontera Fund, we serve in the Rio Grande Valley. So people who live here, or people coming to care to receive their care here, or people from here who are leaving out. So in terms of like direct, like hearing from people who are accessing care up in Lubbock, I haven't heard. But what happened in Lubbock almost happened in Edinburgh. So that in that way, it directly affected us for sure.
I mean, it was devastating to watch and to hear. I watched that. I think that election happened on a Saturday, um, and I just, it was devastating to see that pass. I mean, that it just means that people in Lubbock are now in the same situation that all rural Texans are in. They have to go somewhere else, and for right now, they can go somewhere else in the state. And after September 1st, their only choice will be to leave the state.
What's going to happen on September 1st?
Well, abortion will be banned after 6 weeks. We will have a target on our heads. Kathy mentioned briefly, but I don't know if most people know about this $10,000 part of the private cause of action of anyone can sue us. There's also a financial incentive there. They can win $10,000 should they choose, should they show that we violated the law. And so there's a financial incentive to come after abortion funds and practical support of organizations that help people travel and get lodging for their care. And it's just going to be, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but it's not going to be good. And it's going to look something like it looked in the early days of the pandemic, that month when abortion was banned and our world was turned upside down for a little while.
So Wendy, I think the center and a coalition of other groups are, and you all maybe Lil Fund and Frontera Fund are plaintiffs, are you not? In that case, are trying to stop it from going into effect. But one of the provisions of the law I find is very unique is that it allows for those lawsuits to go forward for up to 4 years after initially being filed, even if an injunction has been in place against the law. So there's liability that attaches even if they get an injunction, or could attach if they get an injunction. I don't think that is, I I don't think that that will be upheld in the long term, but at the same time, let's be clear. If the Supreme Court gives the states the ability to ban abortion again, SB 8 and other laws like it all over the country will go into effect. And we need to then turn to either working toward repealing them, changing the faces in the legislatures, working to make sure women get to safe states. But this isn't going away. SB 8 is going to be with us. There may be some legal fights, but again, let's not depend on the courts to save our rights here. It's time to find other strategies. And let me just say, in our book, In Controlling Women, we list about 28 different strategies activists can take. We hope that you'll take a look at all of those, but most important, just do something to protect our rights, whatever it may be.
Well, one of the things that people can do is to make sure that they're supporting organizations like the Center for Reproductive Rights, like the abortion funds in Texas. The Lilith Fund is a fund that covers the Central Texas area where I live. I give on a monthly recurring basis to that fund. And, you know, even if you can give $5 a month, it doesn't have to be a lot, but if each of us owns our responsibility and opportunity to use what privilege we may have to support the work of incredible organizations like these abortion funds, I hope you will. And Christina or Kathy, there are, I think, 5 different abortion funds in Texas. Can you briefly mention what those are and the areas that they cover so people will know if they are in Texas, what the fund is that's supporting people in their community so that they can support?
Yeah, I think there's actually more than that. We're
Great.
huge, y'all.
We have
It's a
about,
huge state.
yeah, I think we have 10 actually.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
We have
There's so much
10.
need. There's so much need.
Yeah.
But to answer your question about like where people are, if you're in West Texas, West Fund, based out of El Paso would be your fund. If you're in North Texas, T Fund, supports folks in North Texas. Frontera Fund, obviously, in the Rio Grande Valley. Lilith Fund, we serve primarily the metro areas of Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. Gosh, I'm forgetting. Kathy, help me.
Definitely. There's Kaysen out of Houston,
Yes.
Clinic Access Support Network, Fund Texas Choice out of Austin, Support Your Sisters, the AFIA Center, I want to say in North Texas, I believe.
That's
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, they are.
The Buckle Bunnies Fund is Texas wide.
Did you say Fund
I-
Texas Choice?
Yes, I did. I
You did.
think that's it. Yeah,
There's so
there's
many.
a lot of us. We're, you know, Texas is so huge. So we are pretty spread out, which is, you know, we have to be, which is good. But yeah, there's about 9 or 10 of us.
And Wendy, if you are not from Texas, the National Network of Abortion Funds does have a list of all the funds across the country that need support as well. But again, I want to reemphasize that this can't be won by just helping women pay for abortions. I wish it could. So you need to reach deep to get active in the political process, to change the faces of our legislators, to change who's the governor of your state. One pro-choice governor can stop these laws from going into effect by vetoing it. It's really, really important that there be governors who support abortion rights. So again, all of this it needs to really focus on how we can win over the long term, helping women first and winning the political power we need to change the equation going forward.
No
There
question.
are other groups that are, you know, we're being pretty proactive as well. Like South Texans Reproductive Justice, you know, we're an reproductive justice advocacy group down here, and we have started providing free Plan B for people in the Rio Grande Valley and surrounding South Texas counties. And, you know, in there it includes Plan B, condoms, pregnancy tests, and resources too from Theta Fund and, you know, the Valley AIDS Council and STI clinic that we have here, Access Esperanza, things like that, places where we can get, you know, preventative care. So we're just trying, this way people can have it on stock. And if, they are test positive with their pregnancy test, Front of Defense card is right there. So we work, all the repro orgs here in South Texas work hand in hand, being proactive, providing preventative care, and providing, assistance for abortion care. So that's a lot of collaborative approaches that have already, been happening, are happening even further and even more so now.
I'm going to take a question from the audience now. Someone's asking, have any of the proponents of Senate Bill 8 also proposed what to do when thousands of women start getting unsafe, illegal abortions? What is their argument when confronted with that reality?
I'd say they're cheering. That's their whole point. They want to stop. They don't care. They want to stop women from having abortions, and they don't care what happens to them. That's just the bottom line. That was true before Roe. It's true now. Those who oppose abortion are not. This isn't about protecting women's health. It isn't about protecting fetal life. It really, frankly, isn't even about religion, which they put forward. This is about controlling women, making sure that their view of who can have babies and who can have sex with is controlled by people like them. And frankly, they're cheering when women are prevented from having abortions.
You're exactly right. I can't think of a better way to answer that question. Christina or Kathy, do you have anything you want to add?
I mean, that's exactly right. They do not care. I let's let that sink in. They do not care about our lives, about our families, about our dignity, about our right to start a family on our own terms and to raise those families in safe environments. None of that matters to them. This is about control, and that's all it's ever going to be about.
Another audience question: does the new law include women who need to end pregnancies due to obstetric emergencies? And I'll add on to that, are there any other caveats, like if you are a victim of rape or incest, or there is a fatal fetal abnormality that's discovered? Are there any limitations at all on this 6-week ban?
The only limitation I know of is a medical emergency exception, but let's be clear here. That's going to be defined extremely narrowly. Doctors are going to be held criminally liable if they get it wrong. It's not an exception that works. So no, there are no exceptions. And over the years, I've learned that the best exceptions for abortion for most people are life, rape, incest, and me. Meaning most people just want to believe that they have a right, even if the law doesn't let them have it. This isn't going to happen here. The exceptions aren't going to help anyone. It is time that we look at what the real impact is, and that is to prevent almost all, if not all, abortions in Texas, should this go into effect.
Mm-hmm. Something else about the exceptions language that I think we should interrogate is the idea that in order to access your human rights to an abortion, you should be a victim of violence and violation or almost die. That's right. Man, that's very upsetting to think about it like that. And people shouldn't have to suffer and face violence to be worthy of making their own choices in their lives. We all deserve that, no matter what.
So well said, Christina.
Right. Yeah. And it's and like y'all mentioned, and also it's just a way to ban it without banning it. Right? It is a complete ban. It is. It's any type of wiggle room you try to think about or consider or figure out a way, it's like there's something there's a part of this bill that stops that. So pretty much the whole summer, as funds and as advocacy groups, it's been brainstorming. We're still brainstorming. We're going to keep brainstorming, but we're not going anywhere. I really want that to be known. So we really want people to reach out to us if they need help.
Absolutely. We'll be here for the people calling our hotlines, no matter what. Even if something drastically changes, abortion funds are here, and we're doing our best to get the word out about that.
We're so grateful to you for that work. We have another audience question asking, and Kitty, you probably can speak to this. Can you talk a little more about the ripple effect of Senate Bill 8 on the rest of the country?
So the history of abortion laws over the last 40 years is that whenever there is a particularly pernicious law, you see it replicated over and over and over again. So my guess is by the time that the legislative sessions open this fall or at the beginning of the new year, we're going to see similar bills introduced in many, many states, if not the 23 that are completely controlled by Republicans. Right now, across the country, 23 states are trifecta controlled, meaning the gubernatorial seats and the 2 legislatures by anti-abortion Republicans. Another 17 states are controlled by Democrats who, for the most part, support abortion rights. And then there's a bunch of states, the purple states in between. But we're most likely to see replication in those 23 states, and frankly, in the purple states as well, because they see it as what's the harm in introducing it and trying to get it passed. Even if they lose, they can figure out where people stand on this issue and work to change those seats. And we need to do exactly the same, which is in the places where this is introduced, we need to start causing, raising alarm, making sure people know we oppose it, making sure legislators who vote for it understand that they can pay a political price for that vote, and begin to change their faces so that this doesn't continue to happen year after year after year.
100%.
There's another ripple effect that I want to mention. I'm thinking about the ban during the early days of the pandemic. The wait times in other clinics. People are going to be inundated with Texans who need abortions, and what is that going to do to those states? We saw it happen in those months. These long wait times that pushed people further into pregnancy, increased the cost, increased the trauma.
Right. And I think part of the problem is that the anti-abortion states are contiguous to each other. So across the South, across the mountain states, you know, the northern mountain states. So part of the problem is it's not just that you have to travel, it's you have to travel really far. If you're in the South, if you're in Texas, you may have to go to New Mexico or to California in order to get services. And that's a really long way. The middle of the state doesn't have that many states that are good on this issue. And so we need to really think very strategically about how we take back control in places that open up access to more and more women.
Let's close by each suggesting one specific action that people can take to get involved in this fight. And I'll kick us off by recalling what everyone did on June the 25th of 2013, the People's Filibuster that it rightly became known as. It was the simple idea of just showing up. Most of the people, I'm sure, who came to the Texas Capitol that day in protest against the anti-abortion law that was being debated knew that they were coming to lend their physical presence in a show of support. I don't think they had any concept or could have had an understanding that it was literally going to be their raised voices that helped to get the filibuster past the midnight deadline that night. And it just shows all of us the power that we have if we simply move our bodies into action and we demonstrate our fight, our discontent, our support for groups like these abortion funds by just showing up and placing ourselves in some way in this conversation and in this battle. What about you guys? What do you think?
Well, I'm with you 100%, Wendy. I mean, it was very disturbing to me that the Texas law, that SB 8, was passed without the rest of the country really knowing much about it. In fact, it was weeks later. Protest is very, very effective at getting people to know that our rights are in jeopardy. So the more ways we do that, the louder we are, the more determined we are to stop it, making those who oppose abortion pay a price politically. All of those things are incredibly important. But I'll go back and say it one more time. Just do something. It doesn't matter what it is. Obviously, being strategic is important. But if everyone did something, donate to a fund, help a woman, work for a political campaign, try to get a law passed in a blue state, whatever it is, you need to get active now. There's no more sitting back. We can't wait any longer.
Yeah, definitely agreed. And you know, social media is powerful. So interacting with your local abortion fund, with any abortion advocacy groups, definitely that's helpful. I go back to our win here locally because it was just astounding. It was so fun to celebrate. But you know, we were able to mobilize our community in like a couple days, just by flooding social media and people interacting with our posts and doing and people being able to do actions from home, you know, calling city government, showing out when they were able to. In a pandemic, you know, we want to limit social interaction. So there's things that can be done from home. And I feel that this, you know, stopping this ordinance was a prime example. So just interacting with, you know, people talking about abortion as well, being unapologetic about it, destigmatizing those conversations, that also helps a lot too.
Yeah, something I'm really excited about that we're working on here is, you know, back to this idea of misinformation being part of the point is we want to make sure that people have fact-based, stigma-free information about accessing an abortion in Texas. And we're actually launching a volunteer opportunity if you're in Texas to join our abortion hype squad. You'll get everything you need to share the website needabortion.org, which is a Texas-based resource where people can get their questions answered about getting an abortion, connect with funds. And so you can sign up for that with us. We also, you know, just get updates from us and stay involved because there's always going to be new opportunities. And then, of course, donate to abortion funds and, you know, send your dollars to Texas abortion funds right now, y'all. We're on the front lines and we're going to spend them well. And it's an amazing act of resistance and compassion to fund someone's abortion, and especially now, and especially in Texas. So I encourage you to do that. All of the things I just mentioned are on a pinned tweet. If you go to Lilith Fund on Twitter, you'll find everything I just mentioned and you can plug in.
Wonderful.
So Wendy, let me add that if you are not in Texas and you need access to other organizations working on this issue, on our website, controllingwomenthebook.com, there's a whole list of reproductive justice groups from all over the country that you can be in touch with if you want to help.
Very good. Thank you all so much. And I'm going to ask one final question if we can have kind of a quick round of answering it. But before I do, I want to say a special thank you to Kelly Parker, who provided our interpretation services for our conversation this evening. And we'll end with a rapid fire answer to this question: what gives you hope? Christina, you want to start?
Yeah, the people who show up for abortion funds in Texas are the most creative, most ferocious people. They give me hope.
Kathy, how about you?
Youth activists. You know, young people are awesome. I still consider myself a young person, but yeah, youth, creative, resilient, funny, aggressive. The youth are just awesome.
Yeah, Wendy, I'd concur on that. I'm just so thrilled to see activists from particularly young women just be incredibly bold and willing to take on this fight and to be inclusive in so many different ways, so that we actually have a reproductive justice movement that is reflective of all of the needs of women across the spectrum. So I sometimes say it's my grandchildren, but frankly, it's the young people who are activists in this movement who are leading the way going forward.
That's exactly right. And that's what I was going to say to the young people that we work with at Deeds Not Words. Really lift me up and give me hope. They're high school and college age. They want to change the world, and they're not willing to accept something that's halfway. They want to break the system wide open and make sure that it's accountable to and answerable to the futures that they are inheriting. And I'm so grateful for all of them, and grateful for all of you, to the founders and creative folks behind this incredible Repro Film Fest. Thank you so much for your work to communicate in a very human way the issues that impact people across our country with regard to reproductive health and justice. Y'all take care, be safe, and be active. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
Bye, y'all.